Hello, everybody. We're back here again on Lone Oak Farms 17, Farming Sims 17, rather. Thanks for stopping by. We are well into our harvest now in the field north of the house, picking up the windrows with our little Fiat Agri Combine, which, as I've mentioned before, we would never have there in real life. But I happen to like this little combine because it's a hillside model and there aren't very many hillside model combines mods in Farming Sim 17 or later, so that's kind of what I'm using here. It's a good little mod and helps me remember the days of, oh, horseplay, what are you doing that for? Oh, dear me. I'm strongly considering redoing my course here. We'll see, though, if he can figure out how to turn as he gets to the edge of the building here. He's thinking, maybe he'll make it. Alright, good deal. On this combine, by the way, I don't really know much about the Fiat Agri, but I'm reasonably certain this is what you would call a conventional threshing type machine. And I know I've used that term a few times in here. And so I thought we could maybe go look at a diagram. I don't know if there's people watching this that would have ever wondered what the inside of a combine looks like. And I'm not sure I have any pictures to show it. I mean, we would often on the farm look inside the machine when necessary to fix things that broke or for maintenance and that kind of thing. But I don't think anybody was around to take pictures. So why don't I'm going to leave the game here for a moment and go pick up a picture. I won't say this is the best picture in the world, but it's one I found on the internet. First off, it's a corn header. So we out here, kind of as you've seen, Lone Oak Farm, although it did once, I recall, way back in the day before I was born, they actually did have a field corn crop, but it's extremely rare that you would ever see anybody combining corn in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. So consider this as having, say, a belt pickup. But this setup here, I think this looks like be similar to a John Deere 8820 that had a conventional setup. I think all of the combines that John Deere produced through, boy, I don't think they introduced a rotary combine till the turn of the century, maybe. Maybe it was 99. Maybe someone can correct me in the comments. I'm not real good on my history on that. But I think it was about the end. And up to that point, all they produced was what's called conventional threshing. So conventional is kind of the way it had been for decades and years and years and years, maybe going all the way back to the stationary threshing machine. And my grandfather had what's called a stationary threshing machine. He never used it for on Lone Oak, for the farm, but I think when he was a kid, would have been used not so much for a grass seed crop, but it would have been for a cereal grain of some kind, wheat, oats, that kind of thing. But the way the threshing happens, maybe why it's called conventional, is virtually identical in the stationary thresher as it is shown here in this combine here. The only difference between the two is this one moves. It has these it's self-propelled, so it's able to move throughout the field and pick up the crop versus having people bring the crop to it so it can do its threshing. But the guts of the combine, the insides of it, is virtually identical. So when the crop comes off of the header, that's this up here, it enters what's called the feeder housing. That's kind of the throat of the combine, if you will, kind of where the header attaches to the front of the combine. And this here happens to have a chain. And the chain, I think, will go this direction. It's going to turn clockwise, so the material As it comes into the header, the auger is going to bring it here, and the feeder housing chain is going to drag it underneath itself and take it up underneath. Um, I know when I have another modding video, some setups where I fixed a paddle in the feeder housing. Sometimes on one of the combines we had a paddle setup in here, or a series of several paddles that turned kind of in succession, and it would beat the stuff up the feeder housing until it reached what's called the cylinder. That'd be item number 3 up here. Sometimes some conventional threshers would have what was called a beater before, and this one here has one after. But the cylinder is where the primary threshing of the grain takes place in a conventional threshing. And you can see it here. It's just this cylinder-shaped object. It turns kind of like this to be going clockwise, and it has rasps on it, or meaning flat bars that have grooves in it, or some were spike tooth. One of them I think we had on the farm was a spike tooth cylinder where it would interlock, if you will, with other spikes in the concaves. The concave is this item number 4. That's kind of this round thing. And basically all it is a big old steel grate, and the cylinder turns really, really fast. And so the grass would come in here and get the living daylights beat out of it. So any of the seed that was in it would get beat out because it's so tight, so close in here between the concave and the cylinder that there was scarcely room, for the straw to pass through. Although it's remarkable, when you get to the back end of the combine, it's amazing. You'd think the straw would just be blown to smithereens, but it really isn't. It's still very much intact. It really didn't rough it up too bad, in spite of coming through a very tight area. But the goal here is to thresh out the seeds, and the seed that would come out of here, and chaff and various other things, would drop onto what's called a grain pan. So it kind of would come through the concave, if you will, whereas the straw would kind of come out the back of the cylinder, kind of up this lip. It hit the beater and kind of fan it out over these long things here that were kind of separated into several columns. And this is what's called a straw walker. And kind of as the name implies, when the straw would land here, these would be agitating kind of fore and aft, kind of like this, and kind of up and down too while it was at it. And it would just take the straw and walk it off the back of the combine until it dropped kind of in the back. This one here looks like it has a straw chopper set up. So the walkers would take the straw, dump it into the chopper, and it would, obliterate, pulverize the straw before it exited the combine. But the whole distance while it's going the straw walkers through here, the straw, any seed that is still in there, grain, whatever you're threshing, there's little slats all through these walkers that the seeds can drop onto the grain pan. And the grain pan here happens to have some augers. These augers carry it up this way, and these augers are on the same shaft. They carry it this way, and they carry it down from the walkers to kind of a central place. And this area is under the grain pan is open, and it drops it onto basically what's called the grain cleaning shoe, or the sieves, if you will. Sieves is like a type of screen um, where you can sift kind of the chaff from the good seed, if you will. And it only does a partial job. Nothing's perfect on a combine. It's bouncing around. Things are imperfect, even as precise as they try to be. But even with all of that, it does a remarkable job in separating out the seeds from the threshing process. So there's an upper and a lower sieve, I believe. And so it's going to start going down these. It'll fall through. The chaff will go out the back. And this is also agitating, I believe, and maybe going up and down a little bit too as it goes over there. Plus, there's something else going on. Over here, I don't think it's numbered. You see this this unit right here is a fan. And this is turning at a certain RPM to generate a certain breath of air, if you will. Takes it in the side, I think, and then blows it up through the sieves. And the purpose of this, and this is very old technology, extending all the way into biblical times, where even there you could read, they would have the threshing floors and they would use the wind. They would always set up a threshing floor kind of where there would be a lot of wind, and they would, after they beat the grain and the straw, they would then take it up and drop it kind of into a lower area. And while they dropped it, the wind would blow away the chaff, and only the heavier grain would fall, to the bottom, and it would help separate the wheat from the chaff. Well, the principle here is much the same. The air would blow up through here, and it helps blow the lighter material out the back of the combine so it isn't retained or kept. And then only the heavier seeds, would fall all the way through to the bottom to be collected. Now, the air couldn't be very high, and I don't recall the setting. I seem to remember the cylinder speed was, when we put a tack on it, it was maybe 700, 750 RPMs. I don't recall exactly. Fairly high speed, I guess. And it would depend on the variety. But I don't remember the RPMs for the air. I know they had to be careful because, grass seed tends to be lighter and fluffier and easily blown out the back, of the combine. So they had to be careful that they didn't set it to blow too hard so that the good seed, would still come in. And speaking of combine, let's go check on them real quick. Oh, yes, yes. Horseplay up to its old tricks. Blocking our combine from doing its job. Hey, you think horseplay would kind of communicate with itself? There we go. It's amazing. Sometimes I had this one time this was Farm Sim 17, and actually it was a lone oak map. It was a field way over on the other side of the map, field number 26. I had a course play going on the app with this little combine and just looking at the field. It entered and exited the field here. I think the outer rounds were done. But I got it going one evening, and then my wife wanted to talk or something, and I was with her probably an hour talking about whatever it was. And when I came back, I was astounded to see that Horseplay had delivered, and my little combine kept going on this field and got a long ways towards getting done, even though I wasn't there to babysit it for an hour. So when it works fabulously, and I guess that's why we keep trying to use Horseplay. But when it doesn't work, it is quite frustrating. Anyway, back to our, oh, and it dumped it for me here. Back to our diagram. I think I mentioned a little how the grain chute works in a conventional thresher, sifting the seed through here. And the clean seed, or as clean as it can be, gets dumped all the way down into this, I think it's item 14, this auger. I'm not sure what these items, how they're all affixed. But this auger here, which runs a length, and what it does, you can only, it's a cutaway, so you can't see all of it, but there's a little elevator here that goes down to this auger, and it takes the clean seed up, and this is the auger that brings it into the tank. That's what you would see when you're driving in cab, and you would turn around and see it coming out. It's coming from the bottom of the machine. It's being lifted by this elevator and coming out this auger up here. And by the way, even though there are differences in paint color, even though there's differences in engineering and all that, I mean, with due respect to all those guys, what you see here, this is the basic design of a conventional threshing type combine. It's very similar between all the brands. Now, you'll start to see differences in where the rotary combines come in as to how those are set up that differ from this setup here. But if you want to know what a conventional threshing setup looks like, you can pretty well take this to the bank and it's going to be similar if you looked it up, say, in Massey Ferguson or Case or any of the others that may have used it back in the day. Maybe one other little nuance I would point out is maybe it's item 15 here. You'll see there's another auger coming in here, and because it's a cutaway, you don't exactly see it. But this is called the tailings. And I think there's a type of output from the sieves that it doesn't make it over here into the clean seed. Maybe it's a little fluffy so it catches wind and it blows to the back, but it's still got some heft to it. However it ends up here, it isn't sent out the back of the combine, and the manufacturer says this needs to be rethreshed. So the tailings, what you don't see here is an elevator that would take it up and dump it back into the cylinder up here. And it's kind of just a continuous process. It's never a huge amount of material, but there is some rethreshing happening, while you're in the field. So, like I say, this is kind of how conventional threshing works, and honestly, it's the one I'm most familiar with. That's just what I remember from back in the day. And, I don't know if I have explained all this the best. Maybe I haven't used the proper terminology. I think I'm close. But if I'm not, I'm sure someone will kindly correct me in the comments. I'm just giving you my recollections, kind of, as to the kinds of machines we had on the farm. Speaking of, oh my goodness, so hard to find it, isn't it? So difficult. Oh, I see. Yeah, course blades. Probably gonna cut in over here on that windrow. That's what he was doing. He was kind of speeding along with it for a little while. Alright, so now we're into the back and the forth. So I don't know if that bodes well for horseplay. I guess we can pretend that it will. It's just so hard to trust. And this combine, by the way, the one little bit of modding that I did do to it, which isn't realistic, but I had a practical reason, was to increase how quickly it emptied itself. In real life, there's no way we could have emptied that combine in that short period of time we just saw. It would have taken longer. Usually it's measured in the minutes, to fully empty it out, particularly with a light, fluffy seed that doesn't flow very well sometimes. You might have to even get back in the tank, not literally in it, but poke a pile of seed in there to keep it flowing, keep it going. But for the sake of horseplay, for the sake of continuity and what have you, I made it so the combine would just spill its output quicker. Otherwise, I don't think I did a single thing to that combine. Unless it was, yeah, I don't think I had to do anything to it to get it to accept grass. Because I did all that through a script. And maybe I'll show that at some point. Maybe not. It's really not that big a deal. It's just like adding another prop to the machine. Let's go out of game once more. I want to look at another picture. And this one, I mean, just being honest, I'm less familiar with because we didn't use them on the farm, and I was aware of the technology. I know this is what a rotary combine looks like. So what I described previously would have been the older combines, the 8820 that they had, the 6600 side hill, the 6602 hillside. Those used conventional threshing. But in recent years, there is no more conventional threshing on the farm. They have switched to using rotary combines. This is a John Deere STS, and I presume this is what their combines kind of look like on the inside. And this is kind of at a different angle, but you would have, similar to the conventional threshing, you would have the feeder housing coming in over here and the material going up underneath this. I'm not sure what this is here. This isn't a threshing cylinder. It must be a beater of some kind, probably designed to, and again, I hope someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but probably designed to help moderate or regulate the flow of material and to keep it a uniform consistency if possible as it is fed into the rotor. And so the rotor is this unit, whereas in conventional threshing, like if this was a cylinder, it would have turned like this. And well, now the rotor turns the other way. This whole unit turns, and it's got all these rasps in it that are turning round and round at high speed, and the grass is passing through it until it dumps out the other end. And so the function is very similar to a conventional thresher. It's just the threshing is happening over a bigger area. And you'll notice something that's different here. This machine doesn't have straw walkers. And it must be because most of the threshing and separating happens within the rotor itself. So there's apparently no need to have a separate straw walker beyond this. So we'll come off of there. I'm not sure what the purpose of this is. It appears to be another beater of some kind. Maybe it's one more attempt to whack the straw before it heads out of the machine so that any material that it would have, and just like in here, the grain is coming through, just like it would be the sieves of the conventional thresher. Grain is going to be pouring through here, coming down onto the grain pan, and then lower into sieves. And the function of the sieves and the working of them with the air system, I believe, is very similar between conventional threshing and the rotary combine. It's just that the main threshing mechanism of the rotary is significantly different. So I don't know if that's of use to anybody looking at this. These kinds of things just fascinate me. Um, and sometimes I wonder if I should have been an engineer instead of an accountant. But I'm just fascinated by the inner workings of combines in particular. And you can't see it here as I speak, but where I record these, I have a home office, and I'm surrounded by bookcases, and a sizable chunk of the books that I have here are agriculture related, and many of them are related to combines. I just finished a book not that long ago on Case International and their combines, and it's kind of interesting the lengths these manufacturers go to improve their product, to work on it, and I think most of us would intuitively understand it's really hard to develop something brand new. Someone had to invent all this the first time and had to test it and figure out how to tweak it to get it just right. Matter of fact, I think John Deere as a manufacturer has been criticized because they waited so long to come out with a rotary combine when some of the other manufacturers, had already developed one, and maybe there was some accusation of piggybacking technology or what have you. I don't know. And when I was a boy, I used to be pretty die-hard John Deere person, if you will. I mean, that's what Lone Oak had up here, and I guess I didn't really know any better. But as I've gotten older, and you look at these machines, and you see the industrial artistry, if you will, in these that men and women put together as they design these. I mean, it's just a lot of respect for the engineering that goes in there. I don't care what color the machine is. You'll have people that argue all day long, that this color is better than that color, and who knows if they're right. It may depend on a particular application. It may depend on whether you got a lemon when you bought one machine versus another. Who knows? There are so many factors. But any of those manufacturers that have produced combines or any kind of equipment farmers have purchased and used over the years, I mean, you got my respect. I mean, it's that's no small feat to just pull off. It isn't as if someone is trying to build one of these for the first time in their backyard and trying to sell it. Whatever color it is, I'm a I guess I take all colors of the rainbow if you want to look at it that way now. But it just so happens Lone Oak anymore, I think they're still pretty much John Deere. But that wasn't the case back in the day. Um, there was quite a number of other brands that were tried on the farm, and maybe at some point I'll try to dig up some old pictures of some of those. I remember my father saying growing up they had Oliver equipment, Oliver combines, Oliver windrowers. They had, I know I saw when I was a kid up there, they had an Alice Chalmers up there tractor, orange tractor. I think I mentioned back when the windrowing was happening that that they in the past have used other brands of windrowers. I don't know if they've tried Heston, but there's been a couple others that I think Frontier was one of them. Oh, it's kind of ironic in some ways. Frontier is the name of the modding group, Frontier Design, that made, that's who Bullet Bill works through. That's kind of his brand, if you will, for making maps and mods. But everybody's going to always have their opinion on their favorite brand, and you know, I realize that extends into adulthood too. You know, however our opinion is shaped, who knows? But I remember, you know, if we look kitty corner here, see those red buildings over there? I know in the Farm Sim map for Lone Oak, that's where you do the hogs, right? Everybody knows that. In real life, that was another grassy farmer over there, is the Ritchie's family. Um, and they had Alice Chalmers combines, the Gleaner models, if you will. And they were fairly old machines, even back then. I think they had some Hillside models. They were fairly small machines, as I recall. I'm not sure how that brand works as to what the recognizable numbers would be, but that's what they had, and they had oh goodness, maybe 4 or 5 of them machines going in the fields, and you know, like I say, as a kid, they were older machines, and I think they tended to break down a little bit more. And I remember one of my cousins making kind of a callous comment when one was broken down by the road, and he kind of elbowed me in the ribs and said, maybe we need to go give them a can of green spray paint or something, as if a can of spray paint would help the situation, which it wouldn't. But but yeah, and I remember on that farm they really liked their gleaners. I remember hearing one of the owners of the farm say something that he hated John Deere. Well, who knows where these kinds of things come from? All I know is as I've gotten older, I just appreciate all the brands, and it fascinates the daylights out of me to read up on them. In high school, you know, one thing I really appreciated with my teachers, even though I went to a school in town, you know, there weren't that many of us from the country in there, but I did appreciate that when we wrote things like term papers and whatnot, they would allow us, you know, to pick within certain parameters any topics we wanted. So I know one of the papers that I wrote was specifically on John Deere, kind of a history of the company. Another paper I wrote was on the combine itself. So I think I had described kind of the development of it, if you will. And so I look back on that with fond memories. You know, that's one way, you know, a teacher can help a kid enjoy school instead of seeing it as drudgery, you know, by allowing him or her to pick a topic that is of interest to him. May not be of interest to anybody else, but I don't know, I found that helpful as a student to be able to, you know, research areas that I was interested in. And I think I did further another term paper specifically on grass seed. So, yeah, I'm sure some of my teachers in school were driven nuts, with some of the things I was interested in, but I was just thankful they let me pick, topics that were of interest to me. Even in college, I think I did that. And I haven't talked about it that much. I intend to at some point. I know off and on I've mentioned the veracity cleaner. I think in college I did, for one of my business classes, a paper on, what was it, organizational systems and something like that, where it was design of a system and looked at for purposes of efficiency and whatnot. And so I chose a veracity cleaner as something to study. So even in college, I pulled that stuff. I just enjoyed visiting about ag. I didn't care what it was, and I still do to this day. Well, I'm looking at the clock again, and I'm amazed another half hour's gone by. So I think I'm gonna leave things there. Looks like our harvest is progressing nicely, and horse play even is behaving at the moment and getting our seed over to storage. So I'm going to terminate the episode there. Thank you all for watching. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you on the next one. God bless you.